everyone.
There we go.
Yeah.
All right. So Tony, if you're watching the live stream on YouTube, obviously that's going to be delayed.
Yeah, of course.
Wanna,
So, I mean, I'll just...
You won't want to watch it for very long. Yeah.
No,
Okay.
I just put that out the way, and I've cut off the volume on Google Chrome, so none of that bleeds in.
Yep.
At least not into my earpiece, anyway.
So Gunner's here, Frank's here, Clint's here. We're probably there's Rudy. Facebook is not working at all today. And is there a moire pattern with my shirt? You know, I shouldn't have worn this shirt. Doggone it.
Okay, you're in one of my small inputs, so yeah, it is moiring out a little bit, but it's nothing major. Okay. I've seen a lot worse on broadcast news, trust me.
Yeah. Let's see. Let's go a little bit more to the side.
Even seen some people, some meteorologists that completely forget not to wear green.
Yeah. All right, Rudy's here. Very good. Folks, we're just in the pre-show here, and Tony has graced the Streaming Idiots today. He's bringing up the level of quality here.
At least so far as the accents go. I mean, and anything else, it's a little hit and miss.
Yeah, so it's that sort of that London Cajun accent thing you've got going there. It's a real twist.
Cajuns all the way, baby.
Yeah, that's right. All right, Rich is watching from YouTube. Thank you, Rich. Glad to know you're there.
Hey.
Rich is a troublemaker. You remember meeting Rich at the meetup, I think. He was
Mr. Ignacio himself.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Isn't he the guy that does all the jet ski races and stuff in the Panhandle?
Yes, he is. Yes, he is, and he's going to love some of your camera stuff. Yeah, let's don't let the cat out of the bag yet. I need to make one more minor audio adjustment because now that you've turned your AC off, I need to make an adjustment here. So let me unplug for just a sec. I'll be right back.
Mm-hmm. And if you are continuing to watch, Richard, this show is going to be an absolute treat for you.
And it looks like Daniel's here. And we're still in pre-show, folks, so you're not late. You're not late.
In fact, you're quite early.
Let me get my ears in here. Tony, I can't hear anything until I get these guys in. There we go. Mm-hmm. Okay. Right. Somebody was...
You got your ears on, Rubber Duck?
I've got my ears on, that's right. Somebody was posting in the Streaming Idiots group this morning, or maybe it was last night, or maybe it was the vMix group. You know, I get the groups confused sometimes, but they were talking about using Bluetooth for vMix call. Oh, I think it was Frank. Frank's here watching today. Hey, Otis, glad you're here. And... you know, I wonder how much latency they're going to get in that and whether that's going to be the kind of thing that's going to be kind of confusing or disorienting. You know, sometimes when you see somebody talking and then you hear them talking and they're not in sync, it can be a little distracting. So I'd be interested to hear
my
back
deal
from Frank
is
how that's going to work.
With anything of that nature is if you can wire it, do.
I agree.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, my $9 earbuds are not very obtrusive, I don't think. You know, certainly less distracting than my shirt today. So Rich has actually got some great footage.
Is that logo supposed to be yellow? It looks like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers logo.
It's very similar. It's very similar. It's the local high school there. They are the Pirates. And I was helping them with a presentation at the awards ceremony this morning. I was real pleased to do that. So Rich has got some good footage of a water spout that he had, I think, was it Daytona, Rich, where you saw that a couple of weeks ago? That was pretty amazing. Yeah, so Frank's here, and Rich said that the Bluetooth does have the irritating lag. Yeah, that's the only downside with the Bluetooth is it does, if you're trying to sync up something, it doesn't sync up as well in your ear as live does. Really, really,
yeah,
really
it
does.
takes a little bit of while getting used to. It even takes a little bit of while getting used to when I'm actually talking and I hear my voice about a split second or two later. But as I continue to talk now and prior to the show, my mind's going to get dialed in and get used to it. So by the time we actually go live, we'll be in good shape.
Yeah, there you go. All right, let's see if we can get. There we go. That's about right. That's about right. Hello, Tommy. Glad to have you. Glad to have you. I am a fan of Pirates. That's true. Our local high school is the Fairhope Pirates, and we root for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers because one of my Florida State Seminoles plays for that team. Actually, several of them do. Oh, yeah. Rich said it was in Pensacola.
I'm not a particularly big fan of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
You are or not?
The team
I'm sorry.
I like is in the same division.
Aha. Okay. Would that be at Atlanta or Carolina?
The Saints. Come on.
The Saints. Oh, of course. What was I thinking? Yeah.
Oh, they should have been in the Super Bowl.
That's a fact. Boy, that was a. How could you miss a call that obvious? I mean, just I can't see it.
If they can find it, then it's just.
Everybody else was waiting
and now the league has changed the rules on calling IE now.
Yeah. And
PI
now,
I'm sorry.
Hey, Tim's here. Welcome, Tim. Glad you're here. There. All right. So we got just another minute.
YouTube chats.
Yeah, what I'm doing here, Tony, is I've got this big screen TV across from me, and I've got a multi-view, and you and I are in the output, of course, together, and then right in front of me is the camera, but right above the camera is you, so it helps me maintain eye contact with the camera, and then just right above that in the preview window is the chat, and I'm pulling that in from vMix Social. And basically capturing that and then reformatting the page so that it fits up there and it's big enough for me to see. I can only see four or five.
It's kind of like a digital jigsaw puzzle.
Yeah. I can see about 5 comments at a time, and I've cropped it so I can't see the time and I can't see the YouTube logo, but I can see everybody's avatar. Yeah, Rich,
I forgot. Got your phone with you, but. Why not take a photo of it and kind of give me a little bit of a picture as to what you're actually seeing, or give the good
I'll do that.
At home.
I'll do that. I have the phones across the way. Rich, I forgot, and I didn't bring a regular broadcast shirt to the studio today, so we're stuck with this moire pattern. So it'll be a good excuse of what not to do, kind of like wearing green. How can you do a show on St. Patrick's Day? That's what I want to know. How do you do a show in front of a green screen on St. Patrick's Day?
Well, maybe for that day, change it to a blue screen.
Well, yeah, you could. I am, let's see, do I have a 7?
We're T-3.
T-3, all right.
At least that's what it says on my clock anyway. I don't know if there's a change in time difference with Alabama. I'm not too sure.
Well, actually, one of my multi-view inputs is the clock, and so I've got the clock set up with the local time on the bottom, and then a countdown timer to 3 o'clock Eastern on the top. So I'm right at 1.5 minutes right now. Not that the show ever starts on time, but at least it gives us something to shoot for.
Yes, indeed.
Now I understand that the folks at X Keys have a new mascot. just like vMix
Well, there
has
are
got the
mascots
banana
everywhere
mascot.
now.
Yeah, yep. There are mascots everywhere.
Yeah, I was about to say. Yeah, vMix has
So
its. What they name that banana?
Dan.
Dan the
Dan the
banana.
banana. Dan the banana. And yeah, I guess it was in honor of Dan Slider at PI Engineering. I don't know. Hey, Kenny's here. Hey, Kenny. Okay. And I just picked up some background noise from you, Tony. Is that nearby traffic? We have that problem here sometime.
I live relatively close to railway tracks. So I don't know if there's a train coming, but I think actually the fans might have just kicked in on my laptop, so that's probably why.
That'll do it. That'll do it. Yeah, the official mascot of X Keys is Spiny Q Norman.
Okay.
Spiny Q Norman.
I'm not too sure why they came up with that, but there was a thing a while ago where they were naming a ship and they just named it Boaty Boatface.
They ran out of names. There you go. All right. Well, Tony, we are at time, so I am going to mute you and send you to the green room. And so Tony is muted, and we will send him to the green room, and he'll be back in just a minute. And let's get the show started, shall we? Oh, yeah. Did you notice that the barcode? I mean, the QR code? Yeah, we'll talk about that. Okay, here we go. Well, that's what I get for playing with shortcuts right before a show. And I added a few, and I modified a few. And in doing that, I must have adjusted a shortcut that did a automatic fade to black and never faded back. So go figure on that one. Sorry about that. So what an inauspicious way to start what I think is really going to be a good show. I'm Tom Sinclair. This is Streaming Idiots. I'm delighted that you're here, and I'm delighted that you can see me. How about that? That's a good one. Yesterday, if you were not paying attention, and I suspect some of you missed it, the vMix guys had another vMix Fun Time live show live from Australia, of all places. Of course, that's where they live, so I guess it's not all places. But one of the big announcements was a I guess a feature update to vMix 22. So vMix, the current version of vMix is now 22.0.0.60. And with .60 comes a new feature, which I think could actually be a major feature. We'll just have to wait and see. But to the vMix GT title designer. So if you have vMix Pro or vMix 4K and you're making your own titles, and they're animated titles, you can include the QR code. If they're not animated titles, you can still include, let me get this right. If you have vMix HD or below and you have static titles, you can still include the QR code. If it's vMix 4K or Pro, you can do an animated title with the QR code. And you say, what's a QR code? Well, this is a QR code right here. And you say, well, QR code is kind of old school stuff, Tom. Why is a QR code important? Well, it may not be important, but it might be important in certain circumstances. For example, let's say that you had a show about live streaming. Sound familiar? And that part of your show about live streaming was an infomercial. And on your infomercial, you talked about products and services. But wouldn't it be nice if people could just click a link on the screen and go straight to your store? Well, that technology doesn't exist, at least not where I can get a hold of it yet. But with the QR code, if you scan that QR code with your phone right now, I mean, I downloaded a free QR code scanner yesterday just so I could try it out. And if you do that, it'll take you right to our store. Well, that's a pretty good deal, I think. So if you have a store, if you have a business, if you have products or services that you want people to access, what easier way than popping a little QR code right there that they can scan and see what it's there. Now, doing the QR code is really, really simple. I actually made a video before the pre-show about that, but I did it on Instagram and couldn't bring it in. But essentially, it's fallen off a log easy. I'm sure Tim from vMix will have a tutorial up shortly. I'll go ahead and throw a little quickie up on the YouTube page and put it on the Facebook page also so that you can see. But if you're a vMix guy or gal for that matter, and you are selling products or services, you might take a good hard look at whether QR codes will fit into what you're doing. So that's worth a look. And by the way, if you like, you could go ahead and scan that QR code and take a look at our store at easternshorebroadcasting.com, where we have all sorts of cool stuff. So there you go. Yeah, and there's some other good features. Gunner's mentioned it, that there's a new show visible toggle option in the GT Designer also. So we can have a lot of fun with all of that. Really excited about today's show. We've got Tony Lightfoot from the Water Ski Broadcasting Company on. And before I bring Tony on, let me tell a couple stories about Tony. Number one is Tony doesn't know a stranger. I don't think Tony has ever met somebody that he didn't like and that he wasn't glad to meet. At least that's the impression I got. Because when Tony showed up at the vMix booth at NAB this year, and then again at the Streaming Idiots meetup, he said, you know what? These guys need a second camera. So he whips out his phone, he fires up his NDI app, and he tells Ken and Rich, who are running the live stream there. Thank you, Ken and Rich, and also, of course, to Kenny and Dave for doing the interviews. But all of a sudden, they have a second roving camera, and it's Tony's camera, and it really added an extra level of interest, I thought, to the show. So let me go ahead and let me unmute Tony. Let me make sure I've got him unmuted, and let me bring him into the broadcast. Tony, I think I got you. Are you there?
I am most certainly here, Tom. How are you doing this fine day?
I am great. Other than the fact that I screwed up the opening, it's been a good day. I'm so delighted that you could take some time with us today and be on the show, and I also do appreciate you popping in on the Streaming Idiots meetup with your phone camera and adding all the extra to it. That was really a blast.
Not a problem. I mean, I've had that NDI app on my Android phone for Lord knows how long, and I haven't really had much of a use for it. And I figured, well, there's a show going on. They might appreciate in a different camera view, a different perspective. And guess what I had in my hand? Yes, I had my Samsung Galaxy S9 with the NewTek NDI app, and fired that thing up. Told them where to find it because it was connected in the same wireless network as the
PTZ optics guys. Yeah.
PTZ optics stand. And
right.
How could I have forgotten that? But yeah, got it fired up, and as you said, it added an element to the show, and it was all good. It worked out pretty well from my perspective, at least.
Well, I appreciate you doing that. Now, everybody wants to know, how in the world are you using so many cameras with your production? But first of all, tell us a little bit about the Water Ski Broadcasting Company, where it came from, and what you guys are doing, and then we'll get into some of the technical stuff.
Wow, where do I begin? Next year we'll be celebrating 10 years of existence with the Water Ski Broadcasting Company. I mean, it just started with a one-person deal, à la moi, and I felt that the sport of water skiing, which I've been passionate about for Lord knows how long. I've been skiing as an athlete since 1980. Not so much these days, but I've been trying to push the sport out a little bit, to give it a little bit more publicity, a little bit more exposure. And I started with the Junior World Championships out in Italy in 2010, and have been going strong relatively well since then, and I've added some people into the mix, and they bring some skill sets and some grunt work into the deal that certainly makes the whole deal of broadcasting live events a heck of a lot easier. And with that ease comes more functionality and more camera views, and the webcast that we recently produced was acknowledged in the water ski community at large as being one of the best, if not the best, live broadcast ever created for the sport of tournament water skiing.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And so you're traveling wherever there is water.
Pretty much. I mean, it has to be a certain kind of water. I mean, it's not like I'm going to dump a few buoys out in the Bay of Biscay and run a few boats up and down, and hopefully I'll get a halfway decent signal. It doesn't quite work like that. But
right.
We have allied ourselves with a few great tournament venues, not only in this side of the world, but also on the other side of the world, and we've gotten some good close contacts. And arrive with all the equipment necessary to pull off a live broadcast and kind of go from there.
So that's a good segue. Tell us a little bit about some of your gear.
Our gear. Wow. We've got a number of Sony cameras to work with. One less after the previous webcast, because unfortunately that one fell in the water. But of the remaining cameras, we use Marshall cameras. We use, like I said, Sony cameras. We have a camera that's tied to the DJI Inspire 1, which we use for our aerial shots. We use one or two Panasonic cameras in the mix as well. And we pair it up with a PC that has 6 inputs, and we actually expanded the amount of inputs because we utilized an old piece of equipment, a relatively old piece of equipment that I had called the AJA IO4K, to bring in additional inputs using NDI over the network. And we came up with a 10 camera shoot.
And so you're actually using 2 PCs, a desktop and a laptop. The laptop's connected to the AJA card, and sending those cameras over. That's really neat. That's really neat.
Yes, indeed. And the laptop itself not only sent a couple of shots, which weren't mission critical shots, they were kind of, cutaway shots that made the broadcast flow a little bit easier, that type of deal. Not only was I able to do that using NDI, but I was also able to send graphics over NDI to the main desktop computer, and making sure that the graphics had an alpha channel so that the desktop computer was able to throw them up on the screen as and when I hit my button next to the laptop.
Awesome. Have you got any pics of your setup? You got any photos of your setup that you can share with us?
Oh, I never thought you'd ask. Okay, well, first of all, I want to give a big ups to these two guys. The guy on the left is John Waldron. The guy on the right is Vincent Stadelbaugh. They helped me out immensely so far as the setup goes and with the operation of the webcast. We took about 5-6 days of prep time to make it all happen, and without these guys, it would never have happened. So big ups to those guys. Let's have a look at the other portion of the setup. Well, there you see me in my best view, getting ready for the commentary, because not only was I actually sending graphics, but I was also announcing the webcast as well. And right next to there is a huge monitor there, which I saw whatever was going out on the live webcast. Straddled either side was a PTZ camera and a static Marshall camera. There is one of our 10 cameras on the tower overlooking the lake that got pretty much our money shot in respect to the skiers skiing from one end of the course to the next. There was my home for about 11 hours. The laptop, the pad, the Akai pad, right next to it that helped me put up the graphics. And there is my director spot right there. He had a big monitor right behind the one that you saw ahead. You see 3 X keys, not 1, not 2, but 3. There's the main X keys 128 in front of him. Developed the graphics, some shortcuts, and obviously the camera buttons. And to the left of that, there's a joystick control. And to the left of that is a replay control. And worth bearing in mind that each of these controls, because they're all X keys, they have to be configured on separate channels in order to avoid any conflicts between any one of the 3 surfaces. And the piece de resistance is the mouse pad that came from the NAB show. Yes, indeed. And here I am. I'm back.
Oops. Sorry. Wrong button there. There we go.
Hey, no worries. No worries.
That's pretty neat.
So
that's pretty neat.
That was pretty much the setup so far as the pictures are concerned. But what was the end product like?
Oh yeah.
Show us a clip.
Yeah.
Absolutely. All right then. There you see one of our competitors about to hit the water. I used a bespoke graphics there for him. Let me hit a little bit of button here, because I'm actually playing this out of the instant replay functionality of vMix. Bespoke graphics using GT Designer, an absolute boost for this webcast. It really put it on a whole different level. And here's an action replay of one of our skiers heading in towards buoy number 1. And here's a quick peek of one of our unique shots going into this event. We have a camera that's actually based in the water. And one of our other views comes into play, our drone shot, and a shot of the boat driver. And right behind him is a servo-activated Marshall camera that follows the skier from one side of the course to the other. And some more great shots along the dock side as well. There are actually 3 camera views around this dock area. There's a 45-degree dock, there's a camera on a jib, and there was a steady camera right next to it. So I'll come back to this shot, and I'm sure you've got one or two questions for me, especially that camera that was in the water. How was that achieved?
Yeah, I was kind of wondering about that one. Tell me about that water camera.
I'm so glad you asked. Okay, so first off, we used a Panasonic camera, and as you can see, it's a specific form factor to actually fit inside a case with a plexiglass dome. And there you actually see the case before we actually put the seal and screws and everything that made that waterproof. And scrolling through that, and there was our water test. We just put a concrete breeze block and just pulled that thing underwater and left it in there for a few hours, and not a drip of water made it into that case. And the same occurred over the course of that competition. We put a little bit of flotation on it to give it a little bit of neutral buoyancy. And there you see another view of that camera, of that floating camera, which we're going to be using for several more tournaments over the course of the summer. And that kind of gives you a little bit of a rundown as to how we were able to pull off a rather unique water shot.
That is amazing. That really is amazing. Now, everybody's going to want to know, how in the world do you connect? Is it a wireless connection? Is it Wi-Fi to that camera?
Nope.
You can't do Wi-Fi underwater.
Nope. We had a single cable, Cat6 NDI, and the Panasonic camera was one of the ones in their range that are actually enabled right from the get-go with NDI. It's not one of those ones where you purchase and then you have to spend another $300 to get the upgrade to make it NDI compatible. We were adamant about getting that specific camera because of its form factor and its ability to actually maneuver inside the dome and still actually be within its containment, so to speak.
So what are you using to move the camera? Are you using the X Keys joystick?
Yes, we're using the X Keys joystick and marrying that up with vMix, and we create specific presets so that when a skier comes in a particular direction, it focuses on a specific area. Then when that skier starts to move to a certain position, we just hit that camera. It goes to a specific position very, very quickly indeed. It took a little bit of practice to get the speed, the positional speed and all that kind of stuff. But relatively speaking, it was easy on vMix, setting up the shortcuts, the controls, and using the joystick buttons to set up those presets. And it really, really worked out for us. And the comments and the feedback that we had from almost the entire tournament water skiing world was definitely positive all the way across the board when they saw the kinds of shots we're able to pull off using this and the other camera views that we had.
Tony, I would think, I would think that they were just blown out of the water. Just amazed.
Yes, indeed. Nice little pun there.
Yeah, that's right. Well, but you combine that kind of accent shot with a drone shot, and with you say you had two cameras on the boat, one on the driver and one that's articulating on the skier.
Yes, we have two cameras. One that's just a standalone camera that works with the driver. We'll take a look at that shot if you can go to it. And this is our tower cam shot. That was our primary shot, and there's our drone shot using a DJI Inspire drone, and another one right there that follows the skier. Now, because we weren't able to get cameras on every single buoy on the course, we kind of concentrated on a specific area of the course that we knew the skiers would at least get to 9 times out of 10. We also had interview components, and we also We also used scoreboard components married up with Google Sheets. So whenever I put a score in, it updates the leaderboard, and you see an example of it right there. With sponsors at the bottom, and instant replay was used extensively. We used a 4-camera instant replay array, which for those of you that know vMix inside out means that we used the vMix Pro version, the fully leaded $1,200 version of vMix to get all the shots that we needed and to get the instant replay and all the graphics working in unison. So yeah, that's how me, Vincent, John, and the rest of the crew pulled off this webcast. Sounds so simple, but I tell you what, the 5-6 days it took to prep, man alive, it was probably the most grueling 5 or 6 days that we've ever endured setting up for a live web broadcast such as this.
I can't begin to imagine. With all those moving parts, I mean, and literally moving parts. I mean, that's 1, 2, 2 cameras that are at least articulating, and 2 cameras that are in the air.
There's one on the driver, 1 on the skier, 1 in the air, 1 on the tower, 3 on the dock, 1 in the water, another 1 next to the spectators. I think we've got 9 so far, and I can't remember where the other 1 or 2 are. But I mean, and 2 of those cameras actually got fed from an IO 4K that was connected next to my laptop because we actually ran out of inputs.
I can see that. And tell us about the PC that was doing all of the production. What were you using?
We actually built. We actually got John Waldron, another of our partners at Waterski Broadcasting Company, to actually build a decent PC with all of the refinements necessary to pull off this webcast. Can't really go into too many details, but suffice to say, this thing had more fans than a regional turboprop plane in order to cool the thing down during the course of a webcast. But right. But yeah, it worked out very, very well indeed. And one thing that we really encountered a little bit, and one of the main lessons that we take away is to really think about delegating your resources going into something as complex than this. I mean, no PC, no matter how strong it is, can actually take everything that you really want to put in for a webcast of this type. So you have to devote a little bit to the graphics on one computer. We actually had something called a rope tension analyzer in the boat, which provided the graphic that would be on the bottom right-hand corner that actually measured the amount of force exerted on that line at any given time. And the way we brought that graphic in is we used the desktop capture on a separate laptop. We put a green screen on that one, brought that in, keyed it out, and it becomes a graphic in the bottom right-hand corner, and another great application with NDI.
Amazing. How cool is that? I mean, you guys are just having way too much fun.
I don't know if you would have called it fun before about 6 o'clock in the evening on Sunday, the 12th of May, which is about the time the tournament ended. But yep. I tell you what, we were high-fiving each other right after the final presentations were made, and we sure hope that the audience came away absolutely delighted with what we were able to produce, and we'll be cranking them out as much as they want to watch them. We'll be right there for them.
When is your next event?
Next event. Okay, so glad that you asked. Okay, the next event that I'm going to is at Oconomowoc in Wisconsin. It's the last weekend in June. It's the U.S. Junior Open. The weekend after that, I fly over to Milan, Italy, and go to nearby San Gervasio for the San Gervasio Pro-Am event. That's the first weekend in July. 3 days later, we travel to Lacanau, which is on the western edge of France, near Bordeaux, for the Malibu Open French edition. And we've got a little bit of a break after then, but we anticipate broadcasting events in August, September, all the way through to October, and well into November. So yeah, we're busy little bees.
I guess so. All right. So what are the chances of us being able to get you to show us that floating camera again? That was pretty nifty.
Okay, let me have a look and see. Okay, let me fire off that. Okay, you kind of caught me a little bit on the hop there, Tom.
Yeah.
Let me just... That's not a problem. So here we go. And let me reduce that to about 50%. And there you go. That's one of our great camera views.
So that camera is in the water about halfway between the buoy and the boat. Is that about right?
That's correct. Yes, the boat takes a certain path down the course, and the skier goes round the red buoy, and the actual semi-submersible camera is floating about a third the way between the boat path and the actual buoy itself. And we kind of had to make some calculations based upon geometry, because we actually had the camera a little close to the buoy to start off with, and we found that the camera couldn't rotate quick enough or smooth enough to catch the skier as he was going around the buoy. So we actually had to move the camera closer towards the boat, and found that geometry was actually working more in favor of us the more and more we did that. However, we couldn't place the camera that close to the boat because it just would have been downright dangerous, both for the boat, for the camera, and inevitably the skier.
Right. And how much trouble does the wake of the boat? I guess at some point the camera's rocking in the wake and the shot's not usable.
It does. I mean, when the skier makes the turn around the buoy, there is a little bit of rocking with the camera, but for the most part, we get some pretty steady shots up to a certain point. One of our little deals here. Hang on a second. Let me throw that one back up. And okay, well, looks like that shot isn't gonna see the light of day, but yeah, we've had several shots like that throughout the entirety of the webcast, and some dramatic scenes in the event towards the end. We had a double runoff between the two female competitors at the end. Regina Jaquis and Whitney McClintock-Rini, and had some really great skiing from the men's towards the end as well, and that really helped just accentuate what we did so far as the webcast was concerned, to have some of these great water ski athletes produce their best performances of the season right in front of our cameras.
Oh, that's great. Tony, we're beginning to get some good questions in the chat room, so we'll move into the post show if you can hang around for a few minutes and see if you can't provide some answers to some of these. Guys, sure. I really appreciate Tony being on the show with us today, and if you'll stick around for the post show, we can get to your questions momentarily. So fingers crossed, and this outro works the way it's supposed to. Sit tight. Let's see. Otherwise, we'll see you next week. All right, we are out.
Ooh.
And let's bring Tony back in.
Oh, that was quick. That was just like blazingly fast.
Well, and it worked. There you go. All right, so John wants to know, how many camera operators do you have?
Okay, we had one on the tower. Obviously, we didn't have any camera operators in the boat because the camera on the skier kind of followed with the rope, so we didn't have any camera operators there. We had a jib operator right next to the dock. We had a Steadicam operator on the dock. We had a 45-degree camera operator, so what is that? That's three so far. There's one up in the tower, and there's one right next to the director operating the PTZ camera in the semi-submersible case. And so yeah, and I mean I have to really give a big shout out to all of those guys and Vincent and everyone that was involved with making the webcast happen, because as I said right from the top, without those guys, this webcast would not have happened at the level that we really wanted to make it.
Got it. So, and you also have a drone operator.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
So,
yes,
so
yes,
we would include those as a camera. And then
yes,
you're going to have what? Somebody run an instant replay, or is that the same person that runs the PTZ
Same person that was running the joystick was also running instant replay as well. We basically set up the X keys for instant replay and the controls for the joystick to where it was fairly easy for him to be able to do both. We just had hit one button, it presets, hit another to go to another preset, and at the same time he also has the replay mark out, and then play back with a single keystroke. And yeah, I mean it really made life easy. And the only difficult part about getting all that situated was actually bearing in mind that we had to put each of those separate X keys components on separate channels to make sure they didn't conflict with each other.
So all three X keys are on the same PC. So you were running instant replay and running your production on the same PC and inputting 4 cameras, or was it 6 cameras?
Correct. 6 cameras in the PC. Then there was actually 8 cameras going into the PC, and 2 cameras that were attached to my AJA IO 4K that provided a couple of the non-essential shots for the webcast. Just in case, if those 2 cameras went down, not a problem. We'll just cut away to some other shots that were coming into the PC as well. It just would have been nice to have had those cameras. And yeah, I mean, the only real problem that I had with the IO 4K is I had the original version, which had Thunderbolt 2, and I don't know whether you've experienced Thunderbolt 2, but sometimes the connections into laptops aren't all that stable. So maybe sometime down the line I'll probably get a Thunderbolt 2 to Thunderbolt 3 converter and plug that into the laptop, and hopefully the Thunderbolt 2 cable that I have going into the IO 4K is definitely a lot more stable than the one going into the laptop.
There you go. Okay. So tell us about the wireless cams on the boat. What did you use for wireless connections there? Or is it proprietary?
We used Cinegear. Yeah, we used a Cinegear transmitter and receiver to connect between the boat and the shoreline. We actually made sure that we had the receiver situated about halfway down the lake, and then used the fiber optic cable to go from that distance down the lake to our central production point to make sure that we had adequate signal covering the entirety of the lake, and especially as the boat made its way around the corner, because we temporarily had line of sight issues whenever the boat tucks away, and by the time the boat maneuvers around to pick up the skier, then we have a restoration of signal from the boat, and we continued with the skier for his next pass.
Gotcha. Wow. That's cool. Now the the
Yeah,
camera
we definitely made one or two trips to Rentex within the days leading up to that event. Rentex is a big old store right off Orange Blossom Trail in Orlando, Florida, and they basically rent to the movie industry, the TV industry, and if they don't have it, you don't need it.
It doesn't exist. Yeah, yeah, gotcha. Now, tell me about the camera on the boat that followed the skier. How does that work? I mean, was there some sort of gear that was attached to the rope that it was following the gear on the rope?
Yes, indeed. There was a servo-actuated mount that is connected to the pylon where the rope is connected onto, so that whenever the rope made its rotation towards the left or indeed to the right, that servo input is translated to another mount directly behind the pylon, and that helps to articulate the camera. And that apparatus was created by our good friend in Italy, Fidele Luzzeri, who is actually one of the organizers for one of the next events that we will be broadcasting, the San Gervasio Pro-Am, which is in the first weekend of July. And it's a great little system. It keeps the skier in frame, certainly better than a lot of the other solutions that are out there. And it really helps. And another thing to point out is that a lot of our camera views were actually used by the officials at that particular event. Whenever they make marginal calls where it can come down to inches, they used our instant replay to be able to verify those calls as being correct. So that's something that we're particularly proud of at the Waterski Broadcasting Company.
I bet that is so cool, and I'm still trying to wrap my brain around the servo use on the rope. I mean, that's just ingenious. I mean, otherwise you'd have to plop a cameraman back in the back of the boat and he'd be in the way, and it would be all sorts of trouble, or else you just wouldn't get the shot. That would be the other thing. You might not get the shot.
Exactly. Not so much that, because in a lot of events, a cameraman is actually permitted in a boat to actually manually go from one side of the course to the next with a manual camera. But typically, you want to try and reduce the amount of weight that goes into the boat, because if you put more weight in the boat, it actually makes for a bigger wake. And with slalom skiing, you want to try and minimize the impact that the wake has upon a skier's performance. And you do that by reducing the height of the wake. And you do that by getting people out of the boat, reduce the amount of weight. And we were able to do that using the camera servo mount. And it made for the great performances that were there at the Swiss Pro Slalom. That was the actual name of the event, the Swiss Pro Slalom, and you can actually find it at waterskibroadcasting.com, and you can also find us on Facebook, on Twitter, and now on Instagram as well. And we're particularly proud of what we've achieved up to this point, and hopefully we'll go on to greater heights with more innovations.
Now, your background is as a professional water skier. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Or am I just making that up?
That is correct.
Okay, so
no, you're not
so you have an intimate knowledge of this sport, and not only an intimate knowledge of the sport, but an intimate knowledge of the people that work within the sport. So
yes.
You were already a known quantity when you said, "Hey, guys, I have this crazy idea. Why don't we put this camera in the boat, and we can have a drone, and we can have a camera attached to a tree, and we can have a camera attached to a fish, and we're going to do all this stuff." And they said, Tony, you could probably pull that off. I mean, was there a conversation similar to that at some point?
I think I'm going to have a hard time selling haddock vision to Vince and to John. Or bass vision. Bass vision might actually be a little bit more appropriate.
Right.
You always run the risk, though, that if someone is actually fishing nearby, that could be one camera that will be just yanked out the water.
You'll never see that camera again. All right, so you've got this skill set that you have honed using a sport that you are intimately familiar with? Can you take this same skill set and passionate about? Yeah. Is there any interest in taking this same skill set and applying it somewhere else?
Oh yes, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, I've worked in the broadcast industry in Louisiana for several years. Did a short stint in Kentucky, but I've been relatively close to TV stations and radio stations within the Baton Rouge area, and I'm all for taking my skills and doing high school sports, baseball, and all that kind of stuff. So I mean, compared to water skiing, baseball and football should be a relative breeze.
Oh, I would think. They would be no challenge for you at all. I mean, I would imagine that you really want to do, live streaming of competitive parachute jumping, or live streaming of spelunking, or something that's just territory that hasn't already been charted. In the same way that you charted new territory with water skiing.
I see a lot of other sports that certainly get broadcast online and certainly have quite a niche following, such as badminton, such as table tennis. And I look at the available camera shots that they have for those particular sports, and they get away with maybe having 4 or 5 cameras, and barely one or two of them get utilized throughout the process of the event, and I think to myself, I could pull off something like that and maybe make it a little bit better, for sports like badminton or squash or table tennis. You see that just single wide angle shot that goes down the length of the court or their playing surface, and I'm thinking, like, the director must be asleep at the wheel on some of these shots, because he can just hold that camera on that single shot and no one would bat an eyelid or no one would complain.
Right. Well, the challenge would come in when you decided to mount a camera on the player, or if, let's say, you were live streaming curling, that you would mount a camera in the big stone that gets pushed down the ice, or something like that. In the same way that your floating camera gives a truly unique view of water skiing. I mean, it's not a view that anybody ever gets anywhere unless they're in a very dangerous spot, which is in the water next to the boat themselves. That was an amazing shot.
Which is why the camera is situated in that position. I mean, we've had recorded TV shows way back in the day when the sport was broadcast on ESPN on a show called Hot Summer Nights, and I mean, it was a recorded show. I mean, they had someone in the water, they got the shots, they recorded it, they packaged it up, they put it on ESPN about 2 weeks later, or even a month later, just depends whenever they got round to it. But our camera shots in the water are unique in that they're live.
Right.
I mean, it's never been attempted before for our sport, and we were able to pull it off using the very latest of technology. And we were thinking about how we were going to power a camera, how we were going to get signal, how we were going to get control of this camera, and NDI was the only solution. I mean, because you had all of those going into one single cable, one point of penetration into that case. We could seal it shut, just clamp down the screws, with the seal, with the cover and everything. And we tested it thoroughly to make sure that no water would get through that seal or through the cable seal. And it really, really worked for us.
That's amazing. I can see Rich right now trying to figure out how he's going to get that waterproof camera into one of those giant buoys that they use to mark the course in jet ski racing.
Now the thing that I would anticipate Richard having, the major challenge, is the whole corrosion issue, because the majority of his races, or at least a good portion of his races, are in salt water.
He's already faced that.
Salt will eat away at metal if you don't galvanize it or provide some kind of protection there. It's doable, but
you can't galvanize a capture card. It just won't work as well if you galvanize that capture card. But he's had some rust issues. He has. But, and what that means is just that his equipment has a shorter life cycle. He doesn't have a camera that's going to last 5 years. He has a camera that's going to last a season.
He definitely needs a bigger contingency budget. That's all I'm saying in that regard.
Yeah. Yep. So,
do we have any more questions on the live chat?
Yeah, I think people want to know what you're using for internet.
Spectrum.
Okay. And so you're hardwired.
We use a Spectrum Business Internet, and we were able to get the we were able to get some great upload signal there from those guys, and we actually worked proactively with them. We actually had an issue prior to the event, about 2 or 3 days prior to the event, is that the signal that was being broadcast out and the signal that we had coming in was actually needed to be smoothed out at the router level so that we had a consistent signal, because 1 or 2 days prior to our event, it started to cut out for some reason. And the guy from Spectrum came along, he analyzed the signal, he had a look at the router. John, who is an absolute wizard with PCs, figured it out so far as the PC end was concerned, and he fixed all of that along with the guy from Spectrum, and we were able to produce a 1080p 60 frame a second webcast to the world.
Good deal. Well, Tony, this is just amazing. It is.
Yeah, it is.
It is.
It was amazing from our perspective that we were able to pull off this webcast, and not that we weren't going to pull it off by any way stretch of the imagination, but we amazed ourselves in so far as how well this got pulled off and how well the feedback coming from the majority of the tournament world was. And it just seemed to me that the guys that were watching were been waiting for something like this for the sport of water skiing, something to kind of give them hope going down the lines that the sport will see a resurgence in popularity and exposure going forwards.
Well, this is sure going to help. Holy cow. I loved it. I could watch that live. And I don't care about that, but from a technical standpoint, I would be, okay, let's see what's going on here and here. So if somebody wants to go, do you have any of this footage available online? Can we go to your YouTube page and see it now?
Yes, we most certainly do. Yes, okay. Indeed. You can go to waterskibroadcasting.com. We have a YouTube presence. We also have a Facebook presence and an Instagram presence as well. So we've got those covered. Another thing that I wanted to mention so far as that underwater camera is concerned, we actually hooked up a microphone to that camera as well. So you actually heard the skier going whoosh through. And that camera actually came from Switzerland. Vincent Stadelbauer, who actually pieced all of this together, big ups to him. He actually originates from Switzerland. The venue is the Swiss Water Ski Resort in Clermont, Florida. He has contacts in Europe, and especially from a company in Switzerland who produced a waterproof microphone to actually connect in to the camera itself, so we're able to get that sound. We even got sound of the gears whirring inside that Panasonic camera as well. It was that sensitive.
Wow, that's great. Tony, we got to go. Man, you have been a real treat. I so much appreciate you taking the time to be with us today on the Streaming Idiot Show. And I know folks are going to want to go back. They're going to want to go back. They're going to want to go back and back this YouTube video up so that they can get to the QR code that was in your lower third. In fact, let me bring that up again, because that QR, if they will scan it with their phone, other direction, keep going. There you go. Your other right.
Keep going.
Yeah, there it is.
There you go. That QR
if they'll
code.
scan that code, it'll take them to your website.
Yes.
That's the new feature of vMix 22. Is so if they scan that code with their phone, it'll take them right to your website, which will link to your YouTube page. I understand. Well, we got to call it a day. But for folks that are watching live, we're gonna cut away and let the stream kind of run its way out, because there's a little bit of lag and a little delay. And Tony, if you'll hang around for just a second.
And now, can I turn my AC back on again?
You can turn your AC back on again. All right, folks, we'll see you next week. Thanks for tuning in.